What's up, YouTube? Colin here, the Wild CEO, out on the new property here in Texas, outside of Austin. We finally got moved in, took about a week. Haven't even got into getting the shed set up, the gym that's gonna be out there. I gotta cut some racks down, get all that going. And then finally, when we're really moved in and everything's just stopped from an organization perspective, we're gonna look into probably getting chickens, getting that going, and then maybe look into what livestock we can get. Maybe that's gonna be some sheep or goats. I wanna get some cows. I might get that last. My buddy Bill, who's a farmer out here, grass-fed, biodynamic certified farmer in Austin, he is going to come out and share some of how he does things with us, which is gonna be awesome. Really excited for that. And, so stay tuned to get more of that. So that's recent news. If you're following the channel, you'll see more of what we're gonna do out here, but it's gonna be the same: nutrition, ancestral health, fighting bad science, big pharma, big food, bringing awareness to these ideas, and dispelling a lot of the dogmas and even the gurus now that this past week I've been having some Instagram debates with some people. I'm not actually going to name them because it's not worth even sending them traffic because they're just so absurd. But you see a lot of these people in the fitness community, especially, they try to dig into their dogmas. They try to dig into the whole calories in, calories out. They try to dig into the idea that you should eat low fat and all the crap that was been promoted in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s that now to today, based on things we know, based on research, based on the mountain of evidence, we finally, in my opinion, debunked. Yet you see so many people digging in. And this is just confirmation bias 101. This is human psychology. When you actually challenge somebody's belief system, this is proven in tons of research. It's crazy the way this works. But when you, even if it's facts, you say, hey, what you believe is wrong, here's the facts. Most people, most of the time, actually believe more of what they believed, even when you present facts to the contrary. It's really crazy the way this is. There's a lot of ancestral reasons for this. Like, our ancestors need to have groupthink. They needed to think tribally. They needed to think like the people around them. That was the most conducive for survival. And if you would have strayed from that, it could have potentially been a death sentence, or it could have put the whole group at risk. There's all these evolutionary pressures and reasons why we have so many failings of our human mind. Our human mind is just not prepared for this social media, limitless information world that we now live in today. And as a result, we have a lot of maladaptation. And you have people that fall victim to all these biases. They don't want to ask why. They don't want to remain open-minded. They don't want to grow and develop. In fact, there's even research that shows that the average expert, and the more time that someone has been an expert in the field, the worse off they are at knowing what's actually right in that field. Why is that? Well, same thing. Scientists, they've shown, if you look at the past, the only time scientific progress happens, I guess I shouldn't say only time, but most of the time scientific progress happens when the previous scientists from the past generation have died. And then a new group of scientists can kind of come up through the ranks. They remain open-minded. They're trying to find things that are new. Maybe they're trying to even talk about how the old ways of thinking are dying. And so there's an incentive for them to grow and develop. Whereas those that have been thinking this way for so many years, that have published papers, that have taught courses, that have done all these things where they built their life around what they say is the case, think about how hard that is to change that. Even if there's a bunch of new evidence coming out that you should change that. And I see this in fitness and nutrition. I see it in the college system and our education system. The old guard doesn't want to die. And it's going to try to hold on and fight for dear life for as long as it can. But you cannot ignore progress. You cannot ignore new information. And you can look back at history. You can look back at history when we used to think that the earth was the center of the universe. To even suggest that the earth went around the sun could condemn you to death. Galileo, for example, and then Copernicus and these other astronomers and mathematicians in the early days had to be very careful about what they said, even if they could prove it mathematically. You can go back to history and you can see all of this. And so the other thing that I've been doing with a lot lately is this idea that doctors know everything. Well, I just read Ken Berry's book, Lies My Doctor Told Me, or Have Told Me, or whatever the title is, you'll find it. And you would not believe the amount of things that even to this day are common practice, common recommendations, overprescribed, overused, and even some cases that aren't even based on anything scientific. For example, circumcision. In fact, I believe it was Kellogg, the same founder of the Kellogg Company that tried to push his brand cereal and then eventually cornflakes and all that. He was deeply religious. He thought masturbation was a sin and that was leading people to be, leading them astray and whatever. Like there's a whole history to this, but he did a lot of really crazy things, recommended a lot of really crazy things like sewing the head of a boy's penis shut, basically, like the foreskin, so that he couldn't masturbate and or get an erection. There's a lot of really dangerous, crazy, absurd things that even to this day we have yet to dispel because they are considered common. And circumcising children, boys, for example, is one of those that is based back in like the early 20s, that was based on really no science at all, and just maybe someone that was popular or that had a platform that promoted these type of things, and this is a byproduct of that era. I don't remember exactly if it was Kellogg, so don't quote me on that. You could look into that yourself. It's this idea that doctors, oh, here's another good one. I just thought, this idea that doctors know everything, bullshit. This idea that you should never question a doctor, bullshit. This idea that doctors are beyond reproach or that everything they recommend is good, even if it's what all doctors recommend, bullshit. It's all bullshit, okay? There used to be a standard manual for using leeches in healthcare, and it was considered the gold standard. All doctors use leeches. All doctors used to do bloodletting, where they would literally drain you of blood and a way to, alleviate pressure and humors, and it was like basically a catch-all to heal anything. And it doesn't work. In fact, a lot of people died from bloodletting. We know how valuable blood is today. Imagine that doctors used to just basically let it drain out of you because they thought that you were going to be cured that way. Like, it's insane. And every step of the way, if you look back at history, especially in the medical establishment and research and science, every step of the way, those at the forefront, especially when a lot of people would grasp onto an idea, everybody thought they were right. Everyone thought, oh, well, we're here, and this is the furthest along humans have come in our understanding, so we must know what we're talking about. And I think about that all the time when I think about the things that people talk about today. And that's why, with my brand, and what I like to do is I like to focus on the first principles, things we know that aren't going to change. We know how humans have lived for hundreds of thousands of years. We know that farming was invented between 10 and 12,000 years ago, and before then, all humans lived as hunter-gatherers. We can observe hunter-gatherers, we can observe how they live, and how healthy they are, and how they have no tooth decay, and how they eat lots of animal-based products and a lot of fat, and they have naturally lower carb because you don't find a lot of carbs in nature, and we can ascertain nearly beyond reasonable doubt that there are certain first principles of human biology. And also, on that note, real quick, cavemen, our paleo ancestors, actually lived long lives. Most of them died and had a lower lifespan average because of infant mortality and because of lack of common medicine and a medical establishment, right? You could break your ankle and get an infection and die from that. Something that's simple that would literally never be a death sentence today. Also, most babies died. Most young children died. They didn't survive, or something happened. There's a lot of things that brought that average lifespan down. It doesn't paint a full picture. In fact, hunter-gatherer children that live to be 15, I think they double or triple their life expectancy. And every year that you get a little bit older, where you get past that kind of like infant, young child stage, and you get stronger and more robust, it doubles or triples your lifespan. And there's lots of hunter-gatherers that have been observed 70 plus years old that have perfect, robust health, that hunt and that move around and that are strong and fit and not frail and decrepit the way we think of seniors today. I haven't done a video in a week, so there's a lot of pent up here, I know. I wanted to talk today about some of the common myths and dogmas that need to die. And really, I think the video kind of morphed into, it's really about a way of thinking about research and dogmas and scientific understanding, and even worse, research, which if you look into it, most of it's funded by big corporations. And then research that is actually promising, that would maybe showcase how maybe processed foods aren't good for you, or maybe you shouldn't eat grains all the time. A lot of that research gets defunded, or big powers that be come in and squash it or do things or buy someone off. There is so much nonsense when it comes to research, and what I see so much of, especially in the fitness community, they like to cling to these research papers that they cherry pick. Nobody questions what research they're referring to. Nobody ever reads the research or the methods used. And really, to close this video out, because really I need to do the next video, because this is going to be too long. Epidemiological research. I'm going to be doing lots more videos on this. I'm going to do lots of podcasts on this. Go to Ancestral Mind on iTunes and Spotify. You can find the podcast there. Epidemiological research is research that is done through questionnaires. It should be called surveys. It shouldn't be, or polling. It should be called research. Yet somehow that has slipped through into the scientific community, where you can say this research shows or might suggest that there's a very weak correlation between people that say on a forum that they ate like X cups of ribs this past year. That's little questions in the way this research is conducted. And then they look at the rates and whatever, and they make these loose connections. They don't account for smoking or drinking or lifestyle or any of these other things. Then they use that research and they publish it, and the news media grabs onto it and posts sensationalist headlines. And then we get all the misinformation we have today. And what I've been seeing a lot in the fitness community, and some of these doctors, which really most of them are like PhD research or whatever, not actually medical doctors. There's a lot of different forms of doctor. I don't want to get into that today. It doesn't necessarily mean they're good or bad. It just means that they're humans, they're fallible, and like every doctor and scientist in the history of mankind has been wrong most of the time. And there's a really good quote that is basically like, if you look back at the history of science, it includes most scientists being wrong most of the time. So what makes us think it's any different today? What makes us think that today is going to be any different, that in 100 years, they're not going to look back onto today and the research and the science that we have and laugh at us, laugh at our ignorance, laugh at our hubris and how we thought we knew so much. But guess what? There are certain things you can know, or at least that you can know for now until someone or something proves otherwise. And then there's also personal testing, and there's N=1, where you are the experiment, and you don't need some kind of lab coat that may or may not have conducted good research, that may or may not have been controlled for or done anything or whatever, and you can test yourself and find your own variables. Like, for example, I've been doing a little bit more of a carnivore-based diet. I'm still eating plants. I'm still eating some carbs here and there, but it's almost a keto/carnivore diet. My body craves it. I feel better when I'm doing it. I haven't had back pain in 2 weeks, and I've been struggling with that for a long time, and I made the connection between gluten and some of these other things that I've been eating. N=1. I don't need anyone to tell me. I'm a healthy, functional human, and barring a tragic accident, I'm going to live a long time. And I have low body fat percentage, and I'm fit and agile and strong and flexible, and it's like, what? I know, a little crazy, all this nonsense. The takeaway for today's video is I want you to be wary of anyone that claims research. And another one is research doesn't show, but it should say current research doesn't show. That's with everything. And on that vein, did you know there's not a single controlled study that connects meat to cancer or heart disease or anything like that? There's not a single controlled study that has been done where they actually take participants and they track and they feed and they study. Not one. All of the research that has pointed to the idea that fat causes heart disease or saturated fat or animal products or cholesterol or any of these things, even salt, all these things have been based on very poorly done survey-based research, epidemiological research, and that has been twisted, warped. In fact, the 7-country study, which is really like the 21-country study that he turned into the 7-country study because he dropped all the countries that didn't support his hypothesis, and that was Ansel Keys. One of the big reasons why we have the heart hypothesis today and why so many people think saturated fat and meat and things like this cause cancer, when really animal foods are the most ideal food for human beings and for our big brains. I have other videos on this. You can look into the carnivore. You can look at ancestral health, paleoprimal. If you really look and dig into it, animals are the reason we're here today. And the way I can talk to you on this camera that I invented, that is a result of thousands of years of human ingenuity and evolution and cultural evolution and scientific evolution and mechanical evolution. It's crazy when you really look at all this stuff. So, question a lot of the dogma you see. Be very weary of people that make matter-of-fact statements or try to discredit things that might seem counter to pop culture and pop medical culture, pop pharmaceutical culture. People so blindly trust doctors and pharmaceutical companies and things like vaccines and all these things, and the idea that you would question them is somehow controversial. And I think to myself, are you kidding me? It's only in the past 50 years where doctors have created this status where they're the know-all be-all. It used to be going to the doctor in some cases, the further back you go, was a death sentence, and nobody wanted to do it. And doctors usually created more harm than good because, again, they didn't know what they were freaking doing. And I bet you in 100 years, there's going to be a ton of things that doctors today are doing now that doctors in 100 years are going to look back and be like, they were out of their mind. It's going to be the bloodletting and the leech treatment of today. That's what it's going to be in 100 years. They're going to be looking back on us now. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that treatment is. It might be the use of pharmaceuticals. It might be, the opioids. It might be antibiotics, overprescribed. Almost no checks and balances there. And as a result, we're probably going to have a super flu that's going to come out in 10 or 20 years and wipe out half of humanity. So that's enough for this video. Make sure you like and subscribe. I'm coming at you guys. Raw, real, all the time, more often. More posting. I'm out here. I can go anywhere on the property and record videos. I'm going to start doing it every single day. I'm just really excited. And make sure you check out that podcast on anywhere you can find podcasts, The Ancestral Mind. Like and subscribe. Get in there. Get the updates. Subscribe. Send me show ideas. Leave comments below. Do all those things. Let's work together, because this isn't a one-way street. This isn't just me talking to a camera. This should be me talking to people that are then listening, questioning, adding in, and then I can do more of that. And then I can answer questions, and then I can have you on the show, and I can have a relationship with a community that we can help build to help promote these ideas that are going to save humanity, because a lot of what's common is almost invariably wrong. And if it's not at least 100% wrong, in a lot of cases it is, then it's at least lacking a lot of context. And the context and the small variables and the fact that things aren't just black and white. It's all this gray middle that actually matters for all these complex things like health, nutrition, food, exercise, fitness, everything. So that's going to be it. See you in the next one.